Story 1. The Split Pines. Mason Holt had always preferred trees to people. The forest didn't lie. Trees stood where they were planted. They didn't smile at you and whisper behind your back. They didn't change their minds or disappear from your life without explanation. They grew slow, deliberate, honest. Every ring in a trunk told the truth. For 37 years, Mason had lived alone on the northern edge of the Split Pine. A dense, old-growth forest where even the birds grew quiet at dusk. He made his living felling trees and selling timber to the lumberyard in Ashford, the nearest town, 2 miles south. His cabin was small, hand-built, and creaked in the wind like it knew it belonged to another time. On the mantel above the fireplace sat a faded photograph of Mason and his father, both covered in sawdust, holding axes. And just above it hung a red-handled axe. Notched, worn smooth from decades of use. It was all Mason needed. The forest, the fire, and silence. Until the silence changed. The first shift. It happened on a Tuesday. The fog was thicker than usual, draped between the trees like gauze. The birds didn't sing. Not one. Mason had never noticed how loud the forest was until it wasn't. The sound of his axe striking bark echoed unnaturally through the trees, as if the woods themselves were empty. By noon, he had a cartful of timber. The mist didn't lift, but he made his way back along the same familiar trail. Only when he reached his cabin did he realize something was off. It looked the same. The slanted roof, the woodpile out front, but the axe above the fireplace caught his eye. The handle was black. Jet black. Polished. No nicks. No wear. Mason stared at it for a long time. His stomach tightened. He checked the photo on the mantel. It wasn't the one he remembered. In this one, he stood beside a smiling woman. Dark-haired, eyes bright. She leaned into him like they'd loved each other for a lifetime. He didn't know her name. The second shift. The next morning, Mason retraced his path into the forest. He chopped only a few trees before heading back, hoping, somehow, that the world would be right again. It wasn't. His dog greeted him at the door, but it wasn't Jack. It was younger. Sleek black fur instead of Jack's patchy brown. 2 different colored eyes, one blue, one green. It acted like it knew him. Sat at his feet like it belonged. The axe was still black. Now the photo on the mantel showed Mason and the same woman. This time with a child between them. A girl. Maybe 8 years old. The sight hit him like a punch in the chest. He stared for hours, fingers trembling. That face, the girl's, was familiar. Not from memory. From somewhere deeper. "I'm not crazy," he whispered. "I'm not." But when he went to town to see if anyone else noticed something strange, anything out of place, they looked at him like he was the anomaly. The storekeeper called him Mr. Holt, but with a cautious tone, like she didn't really know him. The sheriff, once his drinking buddy, tilted his head and said, "You been away long, Mason?" He had no answer. The 3rd, the 4th, the 10th. Every time Mason entered the forest, something changed. It started small. Different wallpaper in the cabin. A missing scar. New boots on the porch. Then the changes grew bolder. One day, the photo on the mantel was gone entirely. The fireplace was bricked over. The cabin had 2 stories. Once, he came back to find a new truck parked outside, with his name on the registration, but he had no memory of buying it. In one world, Jack was still alive, tail wagging like nothing had ever changed. In another, he came home to a fresh grave behind the house with his own name etched into the stone. Mason tried staying in the forest overnight. Built a fire. Kept his axe close. But when he returned the next day, Ashford didn't exist anymore. Just cornfields and a narrow paved road stretching toward nothing. The journal was his last anchor. He kept it under his pillow and wrote every night, recording each version of reality. After 40 entries, the handwriting shifted. Still his, but wrong. Looser. Messier. Entry number 73 was in French. Entry number 109 ended mid-sentence, in blood. The spiral. He began hearing voices in the woods. Not threatening. Not quite human. Just behind the trees. One whispered, "You've been here before." Another, "You're the ghost now." At night, he dreamed of the woman from the photo. Her face was always blurred. Sometimes she called him by name. Other times, she wept and whispered, "You weren't supposed to leave." One version of reality had her waiting inside the cabin. He didn't go in. The realization. In a version of the cabin he didn't recognize, Mason opened the journal to the first page. Something he hadn't done in weeks. It read, "Reality fractures every time you leave the forest. Each path, a new thread. Each return, a divergence. You will never return to the origin point. You will never find home again. You are lost in infinity." The signature at the bottom was his own, but dated 15 years earlier. Mason no longer chopped wood. He wandered the forest endlessly, following trails that shifted underfoot, trees that rearranged themselves when he blinked. Some realities had no sky. Some had moons in the daytime. Some were almost right, but always wrong in one small, maddening way. He found a clearing where the trees bent inward unnaturally, like a vortex. Sometimes he sees himself walking ahead of him. Older, younger, bearded, clean-shaven. Always disappearing into the trees. Somewhere, a version of Mason Holt still believes he'll get back. But this one, the one still walking, knows the truth. There is no return. Only recursion. On his final known entry, he wrote, "Every version is just a hair off. My name was Mason Holt. I think. In one world, I had a wife named Lena. In another, I hanged myself in this very cabin. I remember both. I remember all of them now. There is no real world anymore. Only iterations. Echoes. I am a ghost drifting between them." He stopped returning from the forest. Or maybe he still does. Endlessly. They say if you walk deep enough into split pines, you might see a man with tired eyes and sap-stained hands, chopping wood that never runs out. A man who asks you, "Do you remember your first life?" If you do, don't answer. Because he doesn't. Story 2. The Hollow Signal. Dr. Mariana Voss had spent 20 years chasing ghosts. Not human ones. Extraterrestrial. Her controversial field, exoarchaeology, was dismissed by most of academia. But in the underground circles of post-contact theorists, Mariana was a myth. The woman who believed that Earth's ancient sites were not just the work of early civilizations, but built upon foundations not of this world. Her latest obsession was in the Orinoco rainforest. A stretch of land untouched by satellites, spoken of only in tribal folklore. The Yarahi people warned of a sacred place, a forest wound around a sleeping god, something that hummed underground and poisoned the minds of those who listened too long. They called it Uru Katal, the hollow signal. Most thought it a myth. Mariana believed it was a buried alien relic. And she was going to find it. The expedition was small. Mariana, a local guide named Tomas, and 2 grad students from her former university, Anya and Jeremy. The canopy swallowed sunlight. The forest pulsed with life. They followed a broken trail etched into ancient stone, covered in alien glyphs that shimmered faintly under blacklight. The deeper they went, the more the electronics began to fail. First it was the drones. Then the radios. Mariana's prototype neural resonance scanner, designed to detect non-Earth metallurgy, started blinking erratically. A faint hum played in her ears at night, like a machine far beneath the ground had begun to stir. Tomas grew restless. He warned her, the god beneath does not forgive being remembered. The others laughed. Mariana didn't. Because she could hear it now, even when the scanner was off. At the center of a vine-choked basin, they found it, a perfect black disk buried under roots and stone, 30 meters wide. Seamless. Cold. Mariana's hands trembled as she brushed away centuries of dirt. Her scanner emitted a pulse, and the disk responded. Not with sound, but with emotion. A sudden wave of grief, then awe, then hunger. It's a consciousness, Mariana whispered. It's still alive. Anya called it beautiful and touched the surface before I could stop her. She fainted. No pulse. But then, she gasped, stood up, said nothing. Just smiled. She hasn't blinked since. Mariana ordered no one to touch the relic again. They don't seem to hear her. They set up camp around the disk. No one slept. The students began acting strange. Jeremy stood motionless for hours at night, eyes wide, mumbling in a language none of them recognized. Shakar inlay. Memory must feed. The other, Anya, carved strange spirals into her arms. The same pattern from the glyphs. Tomas tried to leave one morning. Said they had awakened something they shouldn't. He went into the river to fill canteens. Mariana found him floating, smiling, eyes wide, lungs filled with soil. Mariana couldn't stop. Something had tethered itself to her thoughts. She knew things. Calculations, geometric principles, languages unspoken on Earth. The relic beneath the forest wasn't a machine. It was a prison. A containment device. And it was beginning to fail. Mariana finally entered the chamber below, crawling through a jagged split in the disk's surface. What she saw was not metal or crystal. It was organic. Vast tendrils stretched into the stone. Pulsing sacs of fluid pumped with unnatural rhythm. The walls were covered in faces. Distorted, screaming, frozen in what looked like amber. One of them was Tomas. Another was her, but younger. But her eyes were still moving. The last entry from Dr. Voss' journal was, "I don't know what day it is. I don't know who I am. The jungle is gone. Or maybe it never was. Maybe I am the jungle now." Anya dissolved into light last night. Jeremy's skin is bark. His veins hum. He told me. It doesn't come from the stars. It comes from under them. I hear thousands of voices now. All versions of me. It was never about discovery. It was about exposure. It has learned how to leave the jungle. It knows your name now. Dr. Voss was recovered near the Brazilian border. Malnourished. Dehydrated. No sign of her team. When questioned, she remained silent. She now draws spirals on the walls of her isolation cell. Perfect symmetry, endless loops. Every time we erase them, they return the next morning. No tools. No ink. Just there. The room hums at night. We've begun to hear it. Story 3. The Burden of Knowing. In the year 2439, humanity reached a terrifying milestone in its evolution, the birth of the fully remembered. Every human born after the Nexus shift, a moment in history when time itself fractured, came into the world with a complete map of their life encoded into their consciousness. From the moment they opened their eyes, infants remembered the pain of death, the awkwardness of adolescence, the ache of heartbreak, and the monotony of old age. Every decision, every mistake, every moment of joy or horror, they remembered it all before it ever happened. They didn't cry from hunger. They cried from grief. At first, the world celebrated this advancement. Science heralded it as the next step in consciousness, a collapse of linear time into something more elegant, efficient. But it didn't take long to see the price. Children stopped playing. They sat in silence, eyes blank, already weary with the exhaustion of decades not yet lived. Teens didn't rebel. They resigned. What was the point of choice when all outcomes were preordained? Suicide rates soared, not from confusion or despair, but from certainty. They knew how it would end, and worse. They knew when. Governments tried to suppress the knowledge. The life map was rebranded as a gift, a divine compass, a soul's blueprint. Propaganda glorified acceptance. Walk the path written in your bones, they said. But no one truly lived. They acted out their lives, mimicking the motions of futures they could not change. Then came the refractors. A hidden faction, believed to be myth, who claimed to have found a way to rewrite the life map. Erase it entirely and allow true freedom. They were hunted mercilessly. After all, the existence of choice was more dangerous than any weapon. A child who believed their future wasn't fixed could destabilize everything. One of them was born in the outer wastes. A girl named Mira. From the beginning, Mira was different. Though she remembered her life in vivid detail, there were gaps. Black voids where entire years should be. Events that she was told she'd lived through. First kiss, graduation, the death of her brother. She couldn't recall. Not because she forgot, but because they never felt real. Her map had seams. One night, at age 17, she dreamed of a life she never lived. She awoke with blood on her hands and her reflection in the window smiling back at her, but not mirroring her movements. And then she heard it. This is your rewrite. The rain was relentless that night. Arya moved with the quiet precision of someone who had seen these images 1,000 times in her mind. Because she had. Born with all her memories, past and future, she knew this day would come. Her boots splashed in ankle-deep puddles as she stepped over a rusted rail line, the remnants of the old metro system clawing out from the earth like bones. She came to the place she had dreamed of since birth, a fractured pillar half swallowed by vines, its surface etched with a symbol only she could see. An echo of knowledge from a life she hadn't lived yet. She knelt beside it and pressed her palm against the cold stone. The ground shivered faintly, and then, with a low mechanical groan, a slab of concrete slid aside to reveal a narrow stairwell spiraling downward into darkness. The hidden chamber beneath the ruins wasn't marked on any map. It had been buried in the neural residue of the firstborns, encoded deep within the memories passed from the originals. The air grew colder as Arya descended, the stairwell lit only by the flicker of her retina HUD. The silence down there was ancient. At the bottom lay a circular room, walls lined with decayed server banks and dormant surveillance drones. There, the refractors lived like ghosts. Off-grid, unsensed from the chrononet that monitored human cognition. They told her the truth: the life map was not a biological miracle. It was imposed. Engineered. Every child's mind was branded with an artificial future, designed by algorithms that optimized predictability, control, and compliance. They called it the God Engine. Mira wasn't born broken. She had been hacked. She wasn't supposed to exist. Fueled by fractured futures and a rage that wasn't hers alone, Mira made a choice no one had seen coming. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She went back. Weeks later, the plan was in motion. The birthing labs of the Nexus Shift weren't just secured. They were sanctified. Shielded by AI sentinels and moral doctrine, only sanctioned birthers and mind custodians could enter. But Arya had an advantage. She remembered a future where she had been one of them. Wearing the biosuit of a former custodian, scavenged from a black market vendor who owed her life to a memory she hadn't yet repaid, she made her way through the security gates. Her neural signature was cloaked, masked by a looped echo from her own future memory. A trick few could master. As she passed through the scanners, they read her as herself, but a different version of herself. One who belonged. Inside, the birthing chambers were sterile, clinical, and humming with manufactured purity. Transparent cradles lined the walls, each containing a sleeping infant. But these were no ordinary children. They were engineered to awaken with all memories of every past generation intact, their minds burdened with histories they never lived, identities they never earned. In Lab 7C, she found the sequence. The archive. It was here that the Nexus Shift manipulated the code that tethered memory to soul, binding every child born to the cycles of control. She uploaded chaos, randomness, unpredictability, choice, into the stream that fed the God Engine. And for the first time in nearly 2 centuries, a child was born who did not remember their future. The officials called it a fluke. A malfunction. But behind closed doors, panic spread. If one had escaped the script, more could follow. Mira vanished soon after, and some say she was caught and erased from all timelines. Others say she's still alive, existing simultaneously in every future we were never supposed to have. But the real horror? The children born after her came into the world screaming. Not because they knew what would happen, but because now they didn't. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe for more Rogue Nightmares videos.